So phenomenology is a helpless pointing. It's helpless, but it's not hopeless. It's a helpless pointing. One of the things that phenomenology tries to point out is that Waldo is not in your index finger. Signs are not little boats full of sailors, and these sailors are not pure meaning. Signs have their life in the world, in the roles they play between us. Signs are empirical perceptual objects in the world. So much follows from this. So sure, he already tells us this, and I think Derrida is great, but it's all right there in Saussure. If you really hear what Saussure says, you can almost derive Derrida yourself. For me, it was Derrida who led me back to Saussure. This is also Plato's unwritten doctrine in the concept of characters used by Nelson Goodman. And I claim that this is a fundamental ontology in that it is a helpless pointing at the basic structure of existence, right? So Gerson writes about Plato, and his approach is more scholarly than mine, but I think I can at least agree with him on this. The one, the form of the one, is also the form of the good. Now, this is a somewhat primitive and mystical sounding, pointing at something that is brutally mundane. The brutal fact that the world is chunks of quality. The brutal fact that you hear me right now saying words, but when you hear me saying words, you hear sounds that you've never heard before, but those sounds register as sayings of familiar words. I say the word word. A sound is categorized as a saying of the word word. That is everything right there. But you just generalize that to understand that objects are generalized signs. Objects are the ideal syntheses of their manifestations, aspects, or faces. There's a beautiful, brutal simplicity to what is being pointed at here. But if one understands signs this way, then one understands the difficulty, the helplessness of the pointing, because signs are perceptual objects that we trade in the world, and because we have individual life histories, because we have read different books, because existence is prejudicial disclosure. The way that the sign signifies for me, I say it, I hear it, it is the right word from my point of view. It seems like a good pointer to me, and that means it is a good pointer to me. But I also dimly know that perceptual objects manifest differently, show different faces to other people. Now, when it comes to your standard generalized sign, like the red couch in the living room, this is relatively unproblematic. I don't have much living doubt that others see the couch as I do. Now, I agree that I can't prove this. I can't prove that your red is my red. This is a fascinating issue, but it's not a practical problem, right? But the risk of being misunderstood, that hurts. So for me to be a philosopher spelled Foolosopher, this is something I take from Eugene O'Neill's famous play, The Iceman Cometh. This is the burden of the philosopher. This is why phenomenology is a helpless pointing. People will think you are saying something mystical or strange because they comport themselves prejudicially toward philosophy as a super science. So the critique of metaphysics by positivism, this is not like a hatred of religion, a hatred of politics, right? This is excavation. Phenomenology, which we might call pre-search, is research into into our foregrabbing of the situation. So you expect something from the situation, and the sign radiates and signifies as a function of your expectation. So this is why we are thrown projection. We are thrown into enacting and performing prejudices or routines that we inherit. We are trained into a way of reacting to the perceptual objects that we call signs. So the really, you could say that the effect of genuine study of philosophy is the coming into their meaning of signs. You are tuning the significance of the signs. So the sign consciousness may first signify for you as obviously, in quotes, some kind of mind stuff, some kind of picture. You might think that it is obvious that everyone sits in some theater inside their pineal gland, that what you experience is an illusion, and this sounds profound. So people like Hoffman, I think he's sincere. I think there's this gee whiz effect that is quite seductive. So I don't. It'll be confusing. I could say that I don't believe in a truth maker, in a reality from no perspective. I don't think that language mirrors or even tries to mirror. Now, there's a representational effect. So I may make a chain of sounds, and Joe hears them. And what he does when he hears this chain of sounds is go out the front door and bring in a package that's been left there. It's because I told him that, yeah, the Amazon guy was here. So you could say that there's a kind of representational effect in that Joe responds to these sounds that I make almost as if he perceived the Amazon guy out of the front window himself. So in some sense, I share my perception of the delivery of the package with Joe through a chain of signs. So this is absolutely amazing. Humans are amazing at this. The vervet monkeys already do this, however, in a less supercharged way. But the vervet monkeys, they have a cry for different predators. So there's a cry that they have for eagles, right? So one monkey hears the eagle warning cry of another monkey, and the life of that cry is that it is the presence of the eagle. This copula is complex because, of course, trivially we can thematize the cry as cry. We're not in that life world, and we can say some word like this over and over again until it starts to sound like sound. This, this, this. So we can dig through its ordinary significance to the uncanny noticing that it's a snaky noise. This is the texture. This is the qualitative texture of reality, and it comes in chunks of quality. And it's very hard to tune the word "this" so that instead of feeling the normal significance of this, you actually focus on it as a strange kind of music. So the cry is the eagle, but the cry is the eagle as far enough away to still escape. The vervet monkey hears the cry, reacts to the presence of the eagle, right? Reacts to the presence of the eagle, and now looks to the sky to locate its talons. So this gets us around confusion. I'm not looking at the inside of my glasses. I'm not really looking at the inside of my glasses. I'm looking through my glasses, and I'm not really trapped in a theater in the pineal gland. Now, what do I mean by this really? I said that there is, I don't want to phrase it this way. I don't want to say that there is no objective reality truth maker, because that will sound like I'm trying to mirror the very objective reality that I'm throwing into question here. It's like me saying, instead of me saying round squares don't exist, which sounds like I'm giving you a fact about the very things that don't exist. The less awkward way to say it is that I think this is a fairly meaningless phrase. I think it's kind of a mirage, a semantic mirage. So, phenomenology is a helpless pointing, from the world as it shows itself to me. And I try to point something that you will find in your own existence. So I find a structure. So to me, Saussure's investigation of the acoustic image as form and not substance, this is even the heart of philosophy. This is Plato. This is Heraclitus. This is Parmenides. This is Heidegger. This is a fundamental, ontological insight pointing revelation through words, right? When you change the significance of the signs, when the sign consciousness radiates in a new way, it changes the way other objects are there for you too. So if you sort of see phenomenologically, and I mean that you become convinced that it's absurd to pretend, right? It's absurd to have this verbal theoretical belief that you are inside your own head. And if you really think that through, I think it does drastically increase the intensity of your sense of the immediate. So, this is why I think you have mystics that are adjacent, right? So I've been, in the early days, I played around. I said, rational non-duality, because it is, to me, it's the conceptual approach to non-duality. But just about anyone I've ever bumped into that uses non-duality, I tend to find people, some of them are sincere. A lot of it seems kind of like a racket. But my biggest objection is that they don't seem to really mean anything by it. So for them, it's more of a promise. For them, the envelope is the letter, right? I see myself completely dependent upon my influences, but I see myself, you might say, reactivating the labor of the concept, right? So this is something that can become clear to you. Does anything ever become totally and finally clear? I'm not going to make that claim, but I am saying that it becomes sufficiently clear where your life is changed. I'm not saying it solves all the problems of life, but philosophy can reduce cognitive dissonance, and it can intensify your sense of the immediate. It makes your life more vivid. So I keep experimenting with mundane examples like banana peels and my mom is conscious because the furniture is there. I do this because I think it suffices. It suffices to discuss the mundane, because if you sort of feel the immediacy of the mundane in a new way, it becomes wonderful in the sense of, a cause of wonder. I would say that it enriches your appreciation of the sensual world. And one of the great things about Gadamer and what I call my poetic positivism or my absolute empiricism is that it sort of validates or really just acknowledges the reality of art, the depth and the richness of the experienced world. So absolute empiricism, this is a phrase I just came up with, as I was doing the usual jazz, I think in the last video. So absolute empiricism is like, look, I'm not gonna filter anything out. I'm not gonna pretend that something that is here in any way at all is unreal. It's a triviality that we use the term real honorifically in practical life. Right. So I'm not against that. Yeah, I get it. You can't spend monopoly money. I know how to use real in the pragmatic sense. But you might as well not study philosophy if that's all you ever want to do is be completely immersed in the sign use of practical life. And I'm not trying to shame you. I'm just trying to say, Gelman wrote this book called Words and Things. It's a devastating critique of a certain kind of Wittgenstein language policing fanboy who cries language on holiday. This is a fairly typical reduction of Wittgenstein to kind of an annoying character when, look, I'm not saying he was a saint or he was perfect, but he's a fascinating, cool person who felt the, I think, the strangeness and the vividness of the mundane. And the track taught us, he very compactly presents what he called pure realism, and it's easily generalized, right, from the case of the particular subject to the ontological perspectivism that you can, that is implied by Mach, that is, asserted forcefully enough by Heidegger when he says that Dasein, or existence, is a kind of adjustment of the monad of Leibniz. And of course, it's really all there in Leibniz, and if you just update Leibniz, maybe you're not a theist. So you don't need to say that there's a God monad. It's in Schrödinger, it's in Fasching, it's in Merleau-Ponty, it's in Avenarius, so it's in J.S. Mill. It's more or less explicitly in these thinkers, right? Some of them focused more on what you might call the first person situation. And some of them would try to say, okay, well, given that I understand experience to be the presence of an aspect of the world, the presence of the world from a point of view, how do I make sense of the experience of others? Right. So they have obviously, what has been called their stream of experience is a streaming of my world, but from an entirely other point of view. So this is why the consciousness of another is not some mysterious purple smoke in their cranium. It's not a quasi-physical substance in their pineal gland. It's the entire world from another point of view, right? So consciousness is the being of the world. But subjectivity is, in quotes here, bias, in that to be a subject is really definable in terms of how and which part of the world is there, right? So in a certain sense, your subjectivity is in the object itself. So I've often used the coin for this, right? So a spatial object, if the head side of the coin is in your visual field, then the tail side is not, right? And this is why Husserl was a crucial influence for me. The coin cannot show itself all at once. So the coin is a transcendent, enduring entity, even for me, even if we sort of forget other people for a moment. My lonely experience of the coin is that right now what is in the optical field is not all of the coin. I have not exhausted the coin. I have to turn it around. I can look at it outside under the noon sun. I can look at it inside by candlelight. I can look at it from 3 feet away, 5 feet away. I can turn it this way or that way. So even considered only as a visual object, the coin is already infinite in the sense that it has a sort of potential infinity of faces. And this is relative only to me, my own experience. Like if I'm just honest about how the coin is there for me, it's there as a coin, right? So when I say that the world is chunks of quality, these chunks are spatial and temporal. So the temporal synthesis of the object is even more important in the sense that the spatial synthesis is pretty familiar to us, right? When I see the coin, I sort of automatically isolate it from its background. I separate the visual field into the coin part and the not coin part. This is relatively trivial and familiar, but what is easy to overlook is that the coin is a temporal synthesis. So when I turn the coin over, I go from tails to heads, right? But I know that I'm seeing two faces of the same coin. I'm seeing two sides of the coin, right? So those two sides, those two moments of revelation are synthesized. When I listen to, a song, I hear the first part by not hearing the last part. I hear the last part by not hearing the first part. But I also know the whole time that I'm hearing a song, and I know that I cannot squeeze the song into a single moment. So this is even, first-person phenomenology. The transcendent object cannot be squeezed into the now. So this transcendence, it's almost unfortunate that we use this term, right? There's such a tendency toward mystification in philosophy, and I sort of use metaphysics for that constant mystifying tendency, right? We want to understand, we want to get a strong intuitive grip, right? We do not want to worship the envelope. We want to read the letter, right? So transcendence means etymologically going beyond. So the transcendence of the coin is it's going beyond the now, going beyond the face it shows me now, right? So if I look at the other side of the coin, I'm still looking at the same coin. If I step back 3 feet, the coin is, smaller, relatively speaking, in the visual optical field, but it's the same coin. So the moment, the instant, the coin as it is, like in a kind of frozen perception, that is not the coin, but the coin does not hide behind these manifestations. The coin is a kind of open, ongoing synthesis. So the flower does not hide behind its petals, but it's not reducible to any of its petals. So I guess the main leap we need to make here is that we are in a shared life world, and this is something that this is the forum, right? So the coin also exists for others. The coin shows faces to others. So the total transcendence of the object, it's not just a temporal synthesis relative to me. It's a temporal and logical or interpersonal synthesis. So it's an ideal manifold because I speak in the hope that other people know what I'm talking about. I live in the expectation and the animal faith that the objects are also there for others. And once I get clear on this, this concept of consciousness, once I can demystify this sign and say that, at the very least, in the primary significance of this sign in real life, in sincere life, is that I think people can hear my words, that they can, that the furniture is also there for my mom. Everything else is completely secondary, theoretical. It gets into ideological stuff. Yes, there's an initially tricky issue of what you might call the pre-perceptual world. Like, what do we make of the statements about the past, the sort of past before we believe there was perception. Now, that can be addressed, and I think successfully, but you won't even be motivated to address that problem unless you really clarify your own lived faith that the world is there for you and other people. The same world is there for you and other people. This is the shared perceptual life world. This is the world in which science makes sense. This is the world that we care about. So once you get your talons into a strong sense of shared perceptual reality, this helps you, I think, with every other issue in philosophy.